Okay.
All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, mostly gentlemen. Really nice to see you all. Great to have Phil and Dan back. It's great that you guys don't have to travel so far, so we have the pleasure of hosting you and collaborating with you in a pretty informal and productive way. They both were here in spring this year and gave a talk to some degree. This might be an update. They might be referring to that. We send out a video recording after if you want to dig back into that. We want to do this really as an exchange format already during the talk or IoT Tech Talk series event right here. So Phil is going to speak about 20-25 minutes, and then we open it up for questions and comments. So if you're on the live stream, you might want to consider to go in the calendar invite and follow the Hangout link that is in there. And for those of you who prefer that, you can also use the Dory to ask a question. I think it's a fairly empty Dory in the moment, so not too much voting is necessary to have your question become a relevant topic later today. Of course, this is all only possible thanks to Surab, who kindly took up organizing the IoT Tech Talk series about 3-4 talks ago, which means that we now have really proper recording. We have a pipeline of speakers coming up. We'll share that, and I hope this is really useful to not only learn what the colleagues in academia are doing, but also in facilitating collaboration with them. So if you, after this talk, think you want to work with Dan and Phil, feel free to reach out. We have a number of meetings set up already, but the idea is to facilitate exactly those conversations. Now, for those of you who don't have it as red marked on your calendar, it's actually already 2017 planning time right now. So now is a good time to think about what you want to do and what resources you might need for that going forward in your IoT R&D work. And with that, I hand it over to Phil for some inspirations.
Great, thanks so much, Max. So first off, I think because I'm really glad that you sent out the link to the talk that Dan and I gave back in the spring. Because Max and I were talking and realized, given we'd given that talk and sort of an overview of much of the work we're doing, that today it might be better instead to focus on Q&A. Because I'm sure that this is a huge space. People have all kinds of questions. There's all sorts of cool projects going on in Google. There are all sorts of ways in which this space is quickly changing. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the work we've been doing as part of this project. So this is a collaboration between Stanford, the University of Michigan, and the University of California at Berkeley. But on one hand, we're coming up with new technologies and new ideas, which if you're interested, we'd love to talk with you about. But also, if you have problems you're trying to solve and you'd like to talk with people about, maybe we can help. So it's not just that we want to push technology, it's also we really want to talk to you and find out what are your challenges. I think there's one thing I'll talk about briefly that Dan has worked on, which was something that came directly out of a problem that a Google group was trying to solve. So the Internet of Things, we're going to put computation, communication, everything. It's going to be great, but we all know it's going to be a security disaster, right? Here are these studies showing just how easily compromised these systems are, private data, all kinds of big problems. So just the project that I co-direct with Steve Eglash, which Dan is one of the leading members of, we're just asking this research question of, over the next 5 years, can we push the needle? Can we come up with and to rethink how you might build these systems, how you might build these applications to make them more secure. I think as Dan likes to kind of joke, if we repeated the mistakes of the web, on one hand, that would lead to lots of publications, right? On the other hand, it might be like, maybe we can do better than just repeat the mistakes of the web. Unfortunately, sometimes it looks like that's what's happening, but such is life. And so really our goal is to rethink these systems from the ground up, the software, their applications, everything. With the idea, could we make building secure IoT applications as easy as a modern web application? And of course, there's a large cast of characters involved in this project from all sort of areas of expertise. There's actually an updated version of this. We have a new person on the project I'm going to talk about briefly, Peter Bayless. So if you're interested in programming languages, bug finding, secure systems, cryptography, secure data storage, makers, hardware design, we have people working on topics, a huge number of projects, and we'd all love to talk with you. And so what I want to do is just give you a bit of background, which is that this was a slide I gave in my interview talk at Stanford in 2005. This is 11 years ago. And even back then, we saw this future coming, right? This idea that embedded networks and like tiny embedded sensors and communication would really transform sort of society and technology and what we might do. So there's this real sense that this was coming. This was 10 years ago. But what happened? I think people saw this coming for a long time. In the past, I would argue 3 years or so, there's been a real shift, or suddenly all of these visions or statements of the IoT have become real. And I would argue, being a low-level systems person, that I see two changes in the marketplace that happened that have motivated this actual serious interest in making the IoT more real, and that's something of tremendous interest. The first is the Cortex-M series of microcontrollers. So again, these aren't necessarily new. They were out in 2004, but I was looking at their design specs, 2005, 2006, and they had sleep currents on the order of 500 microamps. This basically meant you couldn't really build an ultra low power embedded like smart thing on a battery with those microcontrollers yet. Nowadays, their sleep currents are down below 1 microamp. So when you see all those little BLE beacons, right, embedded in the environment that can live on months on a coin cell battery, in part, it's because of Cortex-Ms and how they've improved. So suddenly we've gone from 8 and 16-bit microcontrollers to 32-bit ARM microcontrollers. So there's that shift. The second shift was Bluetooth Low Energy. So before BLE really took off, again, this